Is faith really irrational? And if taken to its logical end, does it inevitably lead to war and terrorism? Sam Harris, author of End of Faith, and Hugh Hewitt, who's a nationally syndicated radio host and author of If It's Not Close, They Can't Cheat, have very different opinions on religion, terror, and the future of reason. Sam, let me begin with you. Let me just see if I can correctly summarize the premise of your book. You say that faith in God is inherently irrational, and it results in conflict and war, and in this day of weapons of mass destruction, religious faith should no longer be tolerated by reasonable people. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's a very good start, actually.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So if I accuse you of religious intolerance, you would take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I'm arguing for a certain kind of intolerance. There's no way around that, but it's not the kind of intolerance that gave us the gulag or that would put people in prison for their religious beliefs. I'm arguing for just new rules of conversation. We can call it conversational intolerance, where, you know, if I came on your show and said the Holocaust never happened, I would immediately feel pressure from you to justify that claim, or you would marginalize me immediately as someone who just could not be trusted, at least on European history. But if I come on your show and say that I'm in dialogue with the creator of the universe, or if I know a cracker literally becomes the body of Jesus if you say the right Latin words over it, you have to give me a pass. It's taboo to criticize that, and that's really what I'm challenging in my book.
And so there is no God in your viewpoint?
Well, there's not sufficient evidence for, certainly not for a personal God, and certainly there's no evidence that he wrote any of our books. And we have to realize that we are in a situation where people are flying planes into our buildings because they think God wrote their book and that they're going to get to paradise by dying in the right circumstances. And it seems to me a point of really exquisite obviousness that the response to this situation cannot be, sorry guys, God wrote our book and you're going to hell for your actions.
Okay. Hugh, you must be one of the irrational ones because you are a Christian, as I understand it. What's your assessment of Sam's case?
Well, I read Sam's book closely. It's very well written, very provocative, but it's poorly grounded in history, in the theory of science, and in the theory of theology. He does not simply deal with most of the evidence that runs counter to his case. As a law professor, I'm obliged to say at that point, when you will not deal with the evidence that runs counter to your case, or you distort the evidence that is counter to your case, you wonder what's at the heart of the book. There's a problem out there. It's called violence and cruelty by men towards men, by men towards all sorts of people in the name of faith or in the name of rationalism. It's not about whether or not there's a God, it's about fanatics. And I think Sam has misdiagnosed the cause of fanaticism and has inappropriately laid it at the feet of people who believe, as I do, in a living God and in his word as revealed.
Okay, Sam, that's a strong critique. I'll let you respond.
The idea that we somehow get our morality out of Scripture and that we would be at sea without the belief that our books were written by God really is unsubstantiated. And I agree with Hugh that the problem is human cruelty. But the problem of unjustified belief, religious faith, is that it justifies certain forms of cruelty in certain circumstances, and millions of people are motivated by the content of those beliefs.
Okay, let's let Hugh respond.
Some religious beliefs do justify cruelty. My faith does not. My faith does not allow for individual violence except in the case of just war under the organization of an appropriately ordained state. And I think that's generally the idea of Christianity in North America in the 21st century. What Sam's talking about, and you simply can't erase the 20th century, Sam, that Soviet-style communism was irrational in some respects, absolutely true. That Hitlerism was irrational in some respects, absolutely true. But they were both the products of systems that were thought to be scientifically rational, still defended to this day, by the way, by many people on the left, and who are vigorous in simply saying they went bad because Mao was bad or Stalin went bad. No, they didn't. They went bad because men are bad. And there's a reason why men are bad, and that is the free will theory that we find in Scripture that you dismiss out of hand.
One thing is true. There are many very smart people over the ages who have believed in God, and I think this is a sociological problem, because it just so happens that we have never forced people to really develop rational alternatives to discussing ethical intuitions and spiritual experience. I don't deny the validity of spiritual experience, and I don't deny the ideal of somebody like Jesus, at least as he appears in the Sermon on the Mount. What I do deny is that we have to believe anything on insufficient evidence to explore that range of human experience. But he has to explain, if religion is really not the issue, why don't we have Palestinian Christian suicide bombers, because this is practically a science experiment. You have the same people in the same oppressive conditions with the same language and the same culture, and yet one group makes a sacrament of this kind of violence and one doesn't.
Let's get Hugh's response. Hugh?
Well, Lee, again, it's the wrong question, Sam. You've got to ask, why is there evil in the world? You always begin with the problem of evil. It's because men commit evil. Why are they so bad? It's because they are vain, they sin, they're separated from God, and they do not choose to conform their lives to the easily followed commands. But what I object to in your book, the thing that really disturbed me the most about it, is contrary evidence. Now, there are fanatics, there are even fanatics within Christendom, but there are many, many fanatics within this Islamist offshoot, Wahhabism, that is, you're mistaking for the disease which is widespread. It's a bad problem.
Okay, let's get Sam's
nukes. Well, it's true that Christians are playing their game very differently now in the 21st century, for the most part. That doesn't mean that there are not problems with Christianity, but the thing to credit for that development is not Christianity itself or the Bible. We have to credit hundreds of years of secular dialogue and scientific insights that have forced us to ignore certain aspects of our scripture, because the Inquisition...
Sam, I don't think that's why Mother Teresa went to the streets of Calcutta.
Well, but
not because
you have
of
to explain the Inquisition.
Discourse.
If you think that the people who were killing heretics for 500 years in Europe had not read the Sermon on the Mount, you're sorely mistaken.
We're going to come back in just a few moments, and when we do, we're going to find out how far would Sam go to purge religion from the world. We'll be right back. Stay with us.